So, as you might or might not know, Civilization 7 is currently 30% off on Steam, and it's been out for half a year at this point. And I'm sure there are many people out there wondering whether this is a good moment to buy it or not. Should they consider buying it? Has the game improved in the last few months? And I wanted to make this short video just to let you know what I personally think about that. Now, do note that the game might be 30% off, but that still essentially means it costs $50, just under $50. And I could bore you with a long list of various changes and additions in the last few patches. However, I will say this. If you disliked Civilization 7 for more fundamental reasons than UI problems, maybe some missing features such as auto-exploration, then it's still basically the same game, which means that it's very doubtful your opinion about the game will change. But I will say one thing, and I think this example that I'm about to give you will serve as a good metaphor or commentary on what I think overall about what Civilization 7 has been doing in the last few months. So back in April, in patch 1.2.0, Civilization 7 added research queuing. And I'm not going to talk about how this should have been in on release or anything like that, but I will say this. Yes, you can queue technologies now. However, you cannot shift queue technologies. And I will let that little fact serve as commentary on what I think overall about the current state of Civilization 7. And I don't think this requires any further explanation. And to be totally fair, not all changes are like this one, but there's a bigger problem in the last few patches. And I was actually just talking with Bostius about this. I'm sure many of you guys know him. And he said something that I basically 100% agree with, which is that Civilization 7 development so far misses the forest for the trees in identifying problems the regular Civilization player doesn't experience. Or at the very least, if the regular player does experience them, it doesn't really impact the game in a meaningful way. Meanwhile, the fundamental problems remain. And by the way, I still find Antiquity to be the single most fun part of Civilization 7. If I were to play Civilization 7, I would probably just play Antiquity and basically skip the other two eras. And that's not to say Civilization 7 will not be a much better game, let's say 2 years from now. That's entirely possible. However, it's also not guaranteed, and furthermore, we're nowhere close to that point right now. And one last thing I will say before I wrap this video up is that you can always buy basically the entirety of Civilization 5 with all of the content that has ever been released for it, as well as the entirety of Civilization 6 and all of the content that has been released for it, for a laughably low price on any major Steam sale. So that is partially what Civilization 7 is currently competing with. I personally still play Civilization 5, and I still find Civilization 5 enjoyable. I think right now I would actually play Civilization 6 over Civilization 7. There were quite a few parts of Civilization 6 that I found very enjoyable. But that's definitely the end of this video now, so thanks for listening to my thoughts. I hope you found them useful in some way or another, and I will see you next time.